Hey guys, how all of you beautiful people are doing? And yes, this is the next part of Season 2 of Multiverse of Marvel. When a cinephile and an otaku /weeb travels through dimensions and gets a system which can only be described as overpowered but comes with restrictions. At first he was overjoyed with the system but soon realizes that he is in a very dangerous world where his life was at risk all the time. So let's start without any delay. Host of the embodiment of Blue Lantern. Is that what the blue bird was? Wouldn't that make her more powerful than the normal Blue Lantern? Wayne asked. Yes, she is more powerful than the normal Blue Lantern, John said. As they were talking, a blue ring and a lantern flew over to her. As the ring came to her finger, her outfit changed and got taken over by a suit made of blue color. And then the lantern flew to her body. It changed and became an armor to her outfit. Her outfit now looked ready for battle. This armor was because John had given them the way to make the lanterns into armor. You should now say the oath. I think you know the oath. Yes. Yes. The oath got ingrained in my brain, replied Natasha. In fearful day, in raging night, with strong hearts full, our souls ignite. When all seems lost in the war of light, look to the stars, for hope burns bright. As she said that, her armor which had the core on it lit up for a sec before dimming down to normal. How does it feel? Clint asked as he was happy that his old partner got a huge boost. Even though he wished he would get some kind of boost like she got, but nonetheless he was happy. Really good, I gotta say. But now I need to get to the planet of the Blue Lantern Corps to talk with the Guardians, Nate Sahar said. It's fine. Go away. You are the host. You do need to show your face, John said. Natasha nodded and after a few tries she could fly. Then she bid her goodbye and flew away. Barton, you need to up your game, Tony joked. I am happy with what I have. I have kids and a happy family, which none of you have. Clint had a comeback for that. Fine. Fine. Let's go back, Tony said. Victor opened the boom tube again and returned to the ring. Wayne went to S.H.I.E.L.D. to update the file of Natasha. She was from S.H.I.E.L.D., so there were specific files on her. John and others went to work as usual, even though he wasn't thinking of making a superhero movie anymore, but he needed to end the saga of Darkseid which he had been teasing for such a long time, but the problem was there was no movie on Darkseid. The Justice League War animated movie did have a fight against Darkseid, but he wouldn't make it here because the chronology of his movie didn't match with the movies he had already made. He didn't want to make his own movie as that would not add anything to his fan values. He needed to choose a movie which was already made in his previous life, so his hands were tied. He needed to think twice before he chose any movie. Meanwhile, FOA went to the Sovereign race to complete the mission of securing the batteries. They had to defend against an interdimensional beast named Obelisk in exchange for Nebula. And that they did by fighting against the beast. Only this time, the fight against the beast was much easier and faster because the Teen Titans joined in the fight. As Obelisk landed to devour the batteries, it was hit by starbolts of Starfire and magic of Raven. Groot here wasn't the small one like in the original and was a Green Lantern. Those three made the job more easier, while Garfield, the Beast Boy, transformed into a huge elephant and hit Obelisk. The Guardians of the Galaxy didn't expect the teens they were supposed to take care of were actually so powerful. Even Rocket had no idea that these people were so overpowered. Their powers could crush the actual Guardians of the Galaxy easily. It was good that they were on the same side. After getting hit by Groot, Raven and Starfire, there were scars on the body of Obelisk. Seeing this, Garfield and Blue Beetle were able to inflict a deep wound on the body of Obelisk. Even though the skin of it was tough, all the 5 were able to find an opening. Seeing this, Nightwing took a bomb made by Rocket and inserted inside the body of Obelisk when it was wincing in pain. The bomb entered inside the body of the beast and Damian remote-controlled it to detonate. The bomb was powerful enough to kill the beast from inside. Drax didn't have to go inside of the beast to kill it as he did in the original story. Nightwing had already done research on the beast before they confronted it, as they all had a plan. All gathered together after it was killed. Quill and others still felt weird by the presence of such superpowered beings. When John asked them to add the members to the team, they didn't expect that the new team would take care of them instead. That was easy. Damian said. It's because you all are freaks. Rocket said. I am Groot. You are one to say Groot. You yourself are a freak. Damian replied. You understand the language of Groot? Rocket asked, now surprised. Took me a day to understand as I went through the language. A good teammate should know how to communicate. Damian spoke in a serious tone. Quill, who had been with Groot for such a long time, felt ashamed as he still couldn't understand, neither could the other teammates. After securing the batteries, they went to the head of the sovereign race, Aisha, to get their reward. Nebula and money. And since John had warned them specifically not to steal the batteries, they didn't. Nightwing made sure of that. They all took Nebula, who was in cuffs, to FOA and flew away. The sovereign race didn't come after them. On the other hand, the secret of Yondu that he had done child trafficking before didn't come out, so he was still a Ravager as opposed to the original story. Thus the Ravagers weren't actually hunting for Quill. Nebula was put into the prison that was made in the ship. FOA had all facilities and even had a prison cell. Let's take a rest until our next bounty. Groot, keep an eye on your lantern. Rocket said. I am Groot. Everybody agreed to it, and thus they went to an unknown planet which wasn't inhabited by intelligent species. They all were in a happy mood as they were paid handsomely to kill Obelisk. They brought out food from FOA and placed it outside and were having a good time when suddenly a huge oval white-colored spaceship appeared. Everybody got serious as it was an unknown spaceship. Raven used her magic to look inside. She saw 2 people, one living and another an empty shell. At that moment, she realized that Peter's father was here. Quill, your father is here. Whatever John said is coming true. Raven said. My father? You mean Ego? He really did come for me as John had said. Quill mumbled. Quill, you better act normal and fake your knowledge, if you want to do an in-depth investigation. Don't get emotional. Rocket reminded him. As that was the plan after they left that barren planet where John narrated the story of Ego. They decided that if Ego ever comes in future, Peter would act ignorant and find out after they reach Ego's planet what John said was true or not. The Teen Titans too would cooperate with them as that was their mission. To kill Ego. I understand. Quill said. And the story went exactly like it should have. Ego introduced himself as his father and talked normally. Peter also acted normal, even though he would love to ask about his mother from his dad, but he refrained as it wasn't the right time. Ego then spoke of his heritage and him being a celestial. And then later he took all of them to his planet where he lived alone. Since they had the FOA with them, everybody went with Ego as opposed to the last time where the Milano was seriously damaged. As they went to the planet, they saw the majesty of it. Breathtaking landscapes, Blue clear water and everything. The planet looked as if it was made of fantasy. Everything was under the control of ego. As more time went by, more Quill felt that whatever John had said was correct. Later at night, the Teen Titans went out to search for the brain of ego. Raven was responsible for shielding the detection of ego with her magic. They came back late at night saying that they had found the outer shell of the ego's brain at the core of the planet, and on their way they had found many skeletons of different alien species. "Peter, we need to move quickly. If what John said is remotely true, we have a problem," Gamera said. "I know, I just want him to admit that he killed my mother. Then I myself will blast him away," Quill said, now with anger in his tone. "But how will you make him acknowledge that?" Rocket asked. "He has a god complex. Beings like him see everything beneath him as flies. So he will admit it. I will take out his words while you can start the assault," Quill said. "Agreed. You will be able to occupy him as we blast him. You all should have space gear, because the collapse of his brain will kill him and take everything with us," Damien said. And thus the next day Quill started talking with his father, occupying his attention while the team of Teen Titans went to the same place where they found the brain of ego. "Time to release a god," Garfield said. "Father, now it's time for you to shine," Raven said as she brought out the red crystal where Trigon was held. "I am Groot." "You are one to say Groot. You yourself are a freak," Damien replied. "You understand the language of Groot?" Rocket asked, now surprised. "Took me a day to understand as I went through the language. A good teammate should know how to communicate." Damien spoke in a serious tone. Quill, who had been with Groot for such a long time, felt ashamed as he still couldn't understand, neither could the other teammates. After securing the batteries they went to the head of the sovereign race, Aisha, to get their reward. Nebula and money. And since John had warned them specifically not to steal the batteries, they didn't. Nightwing made sure of that. They all took Nebula, who was in cuffs, to FOA and flew away. The sovereign race didn't come after them. On the other hand, the secret of Yondu that he had done child trafficking before didn't come out, so he was still a Ravager as opposed to the original story. Thus the Ravagers weren't actually hunting for Quill. Nebula was put into the prison that was made in the ship. FOA had all facilities and even had a prison cell. "Let's take a rest until our next bounty. Groot, keep an eye on your lantern," Rocket said. "I am Groot." Everybody agreed to it, and thus they went to an unknown planet which wasn't inhabited by intelligent species. They all were in a happy mood as they were paid handsomely to kill a Obelisk. They brought out food from FOA and placed it outside and were having a good time when suddenly a huge oval white-colored spaceship appeared. Everybody got serious as it was an unknown spaceship. Raven used her magic to look inside. She saw two people, one living and another an empty shell. At that moment, she realized that Peter's father was here. "Quill, your father is here. Whatever John said is coming true," Raven said. "My father? You mean Ego? He really did come for me as John had said," Quill mumbled. "Quill, you better act normal and fake your knowledge, if you want to do an in-depth investigation. Don't get emotional," Rocket reminded him. As that was the plan after they left that barren planet where John narrated the story of Ego. They decided that if Ego ever comes in future, Peter would act ignorant and find out after they reach Ego's planet what John said was true or not. The Teen Titans too would cooperate with them as that was their mission. To kill Ego. "I understand," Quill said. And the story went exactly like it should have. Ego introduced himself as his father and talked normally. Peter also acted normal, even though he would love to ask about his mother from his dad, but he refrained as it wasn't the right time. Ego then spoke of his heritage and him being a celestial. And then later he took all of them to his planet where he lived alone. Since they had the FOA with them, everybody went with Ego as opposed to the last time where the Milano was seriously damaged. As they went to the planet they saw the majesty of it. Breathtaking landscapes, blue clear water and everything. The planet looked as if it was made of fantasy. Everything was under the control of Ego. As more time went by, more Quill felt that whatever John had said was correct. Later at night, the Teen Titans went out to search for the brain of Ego. Raven was responsible for shielding the detection of Ego with her magic. They came back late at night saying that they had found the outer shell of the Ego's brain at the core of the planet, and on their way they had found many skeletons of different alien species. Peter, we need to move quickly. If what John said is remotely true, we have a problem. Gamera said. I know, I just want him to admit that he killed my mother. Then I myself will blast him away. Quill said, now with anger in his tone. But how will you make him acknowledge that? Rocket asked. He has a god complex. Beings like him see everything beneath him as flies. So he will admit it. I will take out his words while you can start the assault. Quill said. Agreed. You will be able to occupy him as we blast him. You all should have space gear, because the collapse of his brain will kill him and take everything with us. Damien said. And thus the next day Quill started talking with his father, occupying his attention while the team of Teen Titans went to the same place where they found the brain of Ego. Time to release a god. Garfield said. Father, now it's time for you to shine. Raven said as she brought out the red crystal where Trigon was held. As she said that, Trigon came out of the crystal. Trigon levitated in front of the shell of Ego's brain. He knew what he had to do and thus used his heat vision of his 4 eyes on the shell. Meanwhile Quill confronted Ego about his mother, and soon the truth came out as Ego spoke of his true purpose. He thought he would be able to be calm when his father would admit it, but he lost his cool. He used his gun on his father instantly. Who do you think you are? Ego got angry when he was shot. Even though he was shot, nothing actually happened to him. As Ego started using his power to make Quill his battery, he trembled. What did you do? Ego said. Aren't you a god? We have a god too for ourselves. We specifically hired his services to kill you. Quill said. You knew about all this? Ego was surprised when Quill said that. We always knew of your plans, but it was me who was naive to think that my father wasn't that bad as my friend had described. Suffice to say, you turned out to be more bad than I thought. It's good we had a plan for you from the beginning. Black Winter is coming and here you are trying to take over the world instead of defending it. You are nothing but a selfish jerk. Quill said. Ego didn't know what Black Winter was, but he knew he would die soon if that beast wasn't stopped from penetrating the shell of his brain. Trigon was already close to penetrating the inner part of the shell. He stopped attacking Quill and vanished. Yeah, you better run. Hey Damien, he is coming, watch out. Quill said in his communications. Ego appeared near Trigon and changed himself to a huge humanoid, the size of Trigon, which was made out of rocks in the surroundings. He proceeded to attack Trigon with this hand from behind. Trigon sensed the oncoming huge hand, he turned back and he swatted the rocks with his bare hands. It's been a long time since someone fought me of my size. It will be fun. Trigon said. Meanwhile, as Ego was busy fighting against Trigon, Quill and others reached the place where Ego's brain was. There was already a huge hole on the shell, and Raven and others were dismantling the small bits to install a bomb and blow it up. As Ego was fighting Trigon, he also saw Raven and others were trying to get inside the shell. He sent his tentacles trying to stop them. And thus on both sides the fight ensued. Here a huge body was facing Trigon, and their tentacles that were made of his nerves were trying to stop them. Puny god, you have some audacity to ignore me and try to stop my daughter. Trigon said as he got angry and directly used his heat vision on the huge humanoid being created by Ego. This dismantled Ego's false body instantly. The Trigon flew over to Raven's side and defended them while they installed the bomb. Daughter, you all should leave. I will defend the bomb. Trigon said. Are you sure about that? You will die in this explosion. Raven said. I will teleport by your side when the explosion occurs. I am an old god, such an explosion won't even scratch me. Trigon smiled. Quill and the others had already reached by their side. And they heard the whole conversation. This guy is your father? Quill asked. Yes. Raven said. And I thought I had daddy issues. Quill mumbled. Stop bickering. Let's go. We have lived on this goddamn planet long enough. Gamera said. Everybody then proceeded to arm themselves with Kryptonian suits with jets to escape while Trigon was defending the bomb. Even though he could kill the brain with his heat vision, but in order to be sure that Ego dies, Rocket was adamant on using his huge bomb. And they weren't sure how the planet would crumble after killing the brain, so they had to leave no matter what. So everybody agreed to this plan of Rocket which they had hatched yesterday night. As Trigon was defending the bomb, others directly used their suit's jet to fly up where a small dropship was waiting for them. There was a timer on the bomb like in the original, so they had to leave fast. And like the actual story, Drax did pick up Mantis while they left as she tried to warn them before about Ego, and since they knew the whole story from John, they knew she was a good person for trying to warn them and thus took her to safety too. Thus everybody were in the FOA when the bomb exploded. As opposed to expectations, after the bomb detonated, the planet didn't blow outward but just crumbled upon itself. There was no huge explosion. They saw the planet lose its color, and Trigon teleported near the FOA. Apart from small scratches on his skin which was healing, there was nothing wrong with him. Raven took Trigon back to the crystal. Even though the Guardians were informed of Trigon from before, they were still in awe of the power of him and that these small teens had such a huge weapon on their hands to use freely. And even he was the father of one of the teens. Gamera, never tell me again that your family was a weird one. Rocket said. Gamera, who saw the power of Trigon, admitted it. Now she saw hope. A hope that with these people they could easily defeat Thanos. But the main concern now wasn't Thanos, but Black Winter. All her life all she thought was of killing her father, and now her father wasn't even the main focus. They were running out of time, and even the presence of Trigon didn't give them enough courage. We should leave, we have completed our mission. Nightwing said. You sure you all don't want to stay with us and have some fun in this vast space? Quill asked as he wanted to keep these awesome teens with him as they would make all their hunts like bread and butter. No, we have been outside for quite a long time now. We should return to our home. Fine. FOS flew back to Mars since it couldn't show its face to the people of Earth. After FOS landed on Mars, the Guardians of the Galaxy bid their goodbyes and took their Milano away. While Nightwing contacted Victor about their successful mission. Victor opened a boom tube for them and they all came over to the ring. Wayne and John were waiting for them when they came over. John always kept an eye on them through memories as he wanted to be sure Ego was killed. Even though the whole movie in his previous life portrayed a funny one, the actual stakes were high. After the thing with Ultron he didn't want to take any risk. How was the god with the small g? John asked. Not so impressive. Just had the usual god complex. Nightwing said. John agreed to this point. The actual gods wouldn't take such a long time to execute his plans. You will be staying on Earth and continue with your normal life. And you all can do your superhero activities. Only rule is the no-kill rule. It's better for you all that way. The building of yours is the same as the previous one, just more advanced. You can go after Pokemon too as that is advisable. Wayne said. It was already April when they returned, so the building of Teen Titans was ready and it had already replaced the Stark Tower. After they heard that, they were a little disappointed, as they wanted to live in the ring with them. You can all come back whenever you want, Guilty Spark will take care of it. John consoled them. And you will have a new companion too. Wayne said as he showed several videos to them. It showed a person who wore a weird red costume swinging across the buildings using wires and had immense strength as he saved people with ease, even stopping a car. He even had a Pokemon to help him in all of this. What is the deal with this guy? Damien asked as he wanted in-depth knowledge about everything. He is Teen from Queens, who got spider-like powers after getting bit by a spider. John said. Then I should be bit by an ant, will get ant-like powers. Nightwing joked. There is an Ant-Man on Earth. John said. There is an Ant-Man and a Spider-Man. Damien asked. Wayne nodded at it while John raised his eyebrows when he said that because that was exactly the dialogue of Banner after he returned to Earth. Stay here for some time and then you can move to New York, while I handle your identities. Wayne said. All nodded at it and went to the Avengers headquarters, which was different from the Hall of Justice as it was made for Avengers and super-powered beings to live. John on the other hand asked Tony to handle Peter Parker and convince the team to join the Teen Titans. At first Tony refused, but at the end he accepted as John said it was better for a guy like Tony, who was the face of the Avengers, to show up for recruitment as he would feel important. Tony showed up at the home of Peter like he did during the Civil War movie and asked him to join the Teen Titans group. He first denied him being a superhero, and thus Tony, not taking no for an answer, told him that his college would be paid for with an internship at Umbrella. This was too good of a deal for Peter to refuse and thus accepted joining the Teen Titans, which was very happy about. He refused at first because if Aunt May would get to know about this she would freak out. He didn't want that under any circumstances. And thus by the mid of April, when everything was settled, the new building of Teen Titans was ready. All of the Teen Titans moved to the building and as Peter was asked to join, he too showed up. Nightwing and Starfire were very welcoming as usual and all the members were good to get along with. Even though Damien and Raven didn't talk much with him, they were accepting of him. Peter was happy that now he had a team and could save people more efficiently. Even though the presence of Pokemon made the world a lot safer, accidents and crimes were still there, so superheroes were still required around. John kept an eye on the Teen Titans for some time after they got integrated. He didn't know how the people would react to it, but was relieved to see that the appearance of Teen Titans in the streets of New York didn't actually cause a lot of discussion. People were more accepting of it. The presence of Pokémon was of great help. Many situations were solved. John was happy with such integration in the society by the Pokémon, and even few gyms have opened around the world. The trainers were selected by professors. So whoever got selected as trainers were good ones. Even though they were not as good as the original world, slowly and steadily they would reach there. The days went by with the Teen Titans doing their superhero things while John and others got busy with their own work. Tony was now hellbent on improving his armor. He already had vibranium armor and wanted to improve on it. One day John went to his lab to see what was going on with Tony's research out of curiosity, as he had cooped inside the laboratory for a long time. "How's the research?" "Working on it. I might have to travel in space to find more suitable metals," Tony said. "Isn't vibranium enough?" John asked, confused, as vibranium was one of the strongest metals in the universe. "It is good. But I feel it's not strong enough. Vibranium can't stop Black Winter. I need better versions," Tony said. John contemplated it, and suddenly one kind of metal that might be available on Earth. "Tony, I am not sure if it's here or not, but you can search in the Antarctic for a new kind of metal. The metal is called Antarctic vibranium. It can literally melt metals when brought close to it. There might be a deposit of it on Earth." "Heh. Liquefaction of metals when brought close to it. Are you sure about it?" Tony asked, now surprised. John's knowledge of things surprised him, and he wondered sometimes how many more stories he had hidden. "I am not sure. You can go and search. There is this metal in other universes. I am just not sure if it's present here. It is essentially antimetal." "Got it, I will look into it. Will bring my Pokémons for search. Since it can melt metals, I shouldn't bring any metal compound, I guess. This will be a headache. Now I have to be a plastic man. You can figure that yourself. Antarctica is cold, so good luck with that," John said with a devilish smile. After Tony got the idea, he contacted Bruce to come with him in this expedition. And since this whole expedition might help them upgrade themselves, he agreed to join. Thus they both set off to Antarctica without taking any outside help. Tony built equipment that didn't have any metals to combat the anti-metal if it ever existed in Antarctica. It was cold there, so he had to make proper gears and everything to combat the cold. This search would take a lot of time, so they had to be ready. He even asked Guilty Spark to be on standby to rescue them if anything went south in this expedition. Tony and Bruce set off while John got busy with his own work. Ragnarok was approaching, and he needed to save Asgard too. He couldn't let a sheep that gave him wool all year round to just die. This would be his first combat against destiny and prophecy, and he was determined to change it. The days went by, and soon it was October. John had amassed quite a lot of fan values in the last few months. Even though he didn't require any fan values right now, he still wanted to introduce new people. On a fine day, John teleported to Kamatage. He needed to talk with the Ancient One about the Ragnarok of Asgard. Odin didn't leave Earth after he came to the ring to discuss the Black Winter. He needed to talk to Odin too about the future of Asgard and for Thor's future. John was sure that Thor would notice that his father was missing and catch Loki impersonating his father and sitting on the throne. John levitated over Kamatage and slowly descended on the courtyard. He saw Mordo and others practicing magic with much fervor and enthusiasm. The threat of Black Winter has given people more drive to strengthen themselves. John nodded at it. Nobody paid much attention that John had arrived, as by now they were accustomed to it. Mordo approached him and asked, "Here to meet the Ancient One?" "Yes." "Go in." John thus went in and saw the usual scene of her sitting in her chair brewing tea. John sometimes wondered if that's all she did all day. "Don't you have anything to do other than brewing tea?" John asked. "My retirement is coming, John. Now I can do whatever I want," the Ancient One said. "Retirement? What happened?" John asked. "Strange has accepted to take over the mantle of the Sorcerer Supreme." The Ancient One smiled and said, "How were you able to convince an arrogant guy like him?" John asked. "I didn't. His arrogance made him use the time stone to look forward in time. And after seeing the future he chose to be the Sorcerer Supreme." The Ancient One. "Huh? You allowed him to use the time stone in such a way?" John asked. "I could have stopped him, but I wanted to see what he wanted to do with it. He didn't disappoint me." "Where is he?" John asked. "In the mirror dimension, practicing. He has become incredibly capable in the last few days with magic," the Ancient One said with a proud smile. "Let's go and see," John said. The Ancient One opened the mirror dimension and both stepped in. They saw Strange fighting against Wong and they both showed equal levels of power. Strange was using magic very proficiently. John was surprised. He knew Strange was a genius, but he had improved tremendously since the battle. "Wong, you can stop. We have a guest," the Ancient One said. Both of them stopped. All greeted each other while the Ancient One opened a portal to the real world. "What did you see, Strange?" John asked. "Enough to know a lot. There is no other way, other than me being the Sorcerer Supreme. I don't want to take this huge responsibility, but I will have to take it no matter what." John wanted to know but didn't ask, as knowing the future sometimes doesn't prove to be helpful and instead pushes the story towards that future more. "Whatever can happen, will happen no matter what." "That's good that you have decided on that," John said. "I am going to meet All-Father Odin," John then said after a pause. The Ancient One nodded at it. But Strange suddenly said, "Take me with you." "Why? Is there any reason?" John asked, as he didn't understand why Strange wanted to meet Odin. Though John speculated it might be because he saw something in the time stone, John didn't ask. John wanted to ask the Ancient One about Strange, but since he has already chosen that path, he didn't need to ask. After saying goodbye to the Ancient One, they both vanished from their spot. John had already pinpointed the location of Odin. Off the coast of Norway. The place where New Asgard was made after they came over to Earth. They appeared again to see Odin standing and watching the ocean silently. John and Strange walked to him and stood side by side. "Expecting your sons?" John asked. "No. I was expecting you. I just didn't expect Mr. Strange to accompany you," Odin said. "How is retirement, away from all the grandeur of Asgard?" John asked. "I was driven by my ambitions for a long time. But ambitions change over time. A lifetime of war and brutality changes people," Odin said in an old voice. John nodded at it, as he had been fighting for a long time. "So I guess you know why I am here, since you are expecting us," John said. "Yes. The Ragnarok. Asgard needs to be saved," Odin said. "It does. I can't let such a beautiful place die just like that, Jon said. As they were talking, the Bifrost opened and out came Loki, Thor, Kratos and Atreus. They came by Bifrost because Heimdall was still in the helm of the Bifrost. Even though Loki impersonated Odin after he had left Asgard, he didn't try to change the whole management of Asgard like he did in the original. Due to the butterfly effect, he chose to take a different path, and Heimdall too didn't rebel against Loki even though he knew Loki was the false king. Probably because Odin asked him not to do so. What surprised Jon was that Kratos and Atreus came with them. That he didn't expect. Jon, you are here too, Thor said with a smile. Loki had fear in his face when he saw Jon. The last time they met it didn't end well for him. He hesitated but kept his ground and didn't step back after seeing him. Jon gave him more fear than Hulk. Father, we have been waiting for you to come back, Thor said to Odin, the person who he actually came for. It was after the expedition of all the 9 realms he came to know that his father wasn't in Asgard anymore and Loki was sitting at the throne using his father's identity. My sons. You are here. Come. Odin said. Jon suddenly remembered something and chanted a spell. After the spell was completed, a portal opened and out came Frigga. At this point he didn't give a damn about the TVA. The timeline had already gone out of his hands. Thor and others who saw the portal and the emergence of Frigga were happy. Especially Loki, he hadn't seen his mother for a long time. Atreus ran up to her and hugged Frigga. My queen, I was going to meet you, but I didn't know if I had the courage, Odin said. Queen Frigga looked sad as she knew that the time of Odin was coming to an end. Father, we are here to take you home. Loki impersonated you, but we will make things right. Right? Yes. We can't make the past right. We can only look forward. My sons, my time has come. Ragnarok is approaching. Ragnarok. Father, I already defeated Searcher. We will defeat Black Winter. It's far away and Jon here had already said that I defeated it once. I will confront this being named Galactus and I will save the universe. You fool. You don't even know what kind of being Galactus is. You haven't seen him. He is the devourer of worlds with the power cosmic. Do you think stopping Black Winter will be very easy? Odin reprimanded. Even Loki now knew about the Black Winter and had a solemn face. Then father, you will be with us then. We will defeat Black Winter by ourselves. Thor then said. No, my sons. I have reached the end of my path. I can't continue here any longer. Odin said. What do you mean? Thor asked. He means that your father has reached his end, my son. He is going to die. Frigga finally said in simple terms. That is impossible. You are still young. Thor said. We aren't immortal, Thor. We live, we die. But she will be coming after my death. Odin said. Who? Loki asked. My firstborn. Hela, the goddess of death. Odin said. She is the real Ragnarok. My existence is what stopped her from breaking hell as I imprisoned her. She will be coming after you all after my departure. Odin said. Father, I am sure there is various magic or technology on Earth that can prolong your life. Even the witches have found the corpse of a dragon that could prolong life. I am sure it will be applicable to you. Thor said. Odin shook his head and said. No. My path has diverged and I won't be in this conflict anymore. It's you all who will confront her. John and Kratos will help you. I have a question. Is Hela really your firstborn? John suddenly wanted to know. He wanted to know if Odin's other daughter Angela existed in this universe. You mean Aldrich? She was killed in that battle. Odin said with a sad tone, reminiscing the past. We had 2 sisters which we never knew. Typical of you, father. Loki mocked. Loki. Thor and Frigga both shouted at him. She might not be dead. John said. He instantly used his helmet to find the location of Aldrich, aka Angela. After a second of searching, John did find her. John then smiled and said, "Yup, she is alive." "What? My firstborn? She is alive?" Thor, Loki, Kratos. Please find her and bring her back. This is my last request before I go. John, please help my sons. Atreus, look after your brothers. Both are fools, only you are the sensible and normal among my children. My queen, I leave you a kingdom which is on the brink of disaster. I hope you will forgive me. Odin said. His words made everyone sad, even John. No matter what he did in the past, Odin did whatever he had to do to put everything in order. But sometimes the past will always come back to haunt you. Hela was one of them. It's all right, my king. I will take care of them. Be well on the journey to Valhalla. Frigga said with tears in her eyes. She knew this part of life was going to come someday, but now when the time came, it was more hurtful than she expected. Atreus had tears in his eyes, and Kratos too had a sad face. Odin was the first god who didn't look at him in a condescending eyes and treated him as his equals. Odin then turned into golden dust and the dust was blown away by the winds. John, who was sad, became serious now as he knew a huge fight would be coming, and this fight should never happen in Asgard. It would be game over if the battle was fought in Asgard, as Hela would be too powerful there. John needed to end everything right here and now before she grew too powerful. As he was getting ready, a black spot appeared out of thin air near them. John, who was already in his helmet, shouted, "Shazam!" As he said that, a huge lightning dropped on him from above. He now looked more muscular and tall. After the battle against Strange, he didn't let go of the power. Now the power of Shazam was shared by both John and Constantine. Everybody knew of this power by now, so nobody was surprised, except for Frigga. She wasn't up to date with the works of John, so he didn't know. The black spot finally became very big and out came Hela, with her weird smoky eyes. She still wasn't in full power. Only in Asgard she would be immensely powerful. So he is gone. It's a shame, I would have liked to have seen that. Hello mother, how have you been? Didn't expect you to be alive even after all this time. Oh. Seems like you all have a welcoming party for me. Hela said. You must be Hela. I am Thor, son of Odin. Really? You don't look like him. Hela said. Perhaps we can come into an arrangement. Loki said. You sound like him. Hela said. Hela, my daughter, you don't have to do this. Frigga finally said. That's a good joke. After millennia in captivity, you expect me to forget all that's happened. Asgard will shine again under my rule. Kneel. Hela said with a serious tone. It's useless to reason with her. She will sacrifice all of Asgard just to be the queen of nothing. John said. Oh. You seem to know a lot of me. I can feel an immense magic power from you. It's because I am powerful. John said as he used lightning to blast at Hela. This lightning blast was so powerful that it threw away Hela a few meters, before finally stopping. "What are you waiting for? Attack!" John said as he transformed himself into a phoenix. Like before, his fire body was covered with lightning. Everybody got serious when John said that. They had only seen John this serious in the fight against Strange. Thor and Loki both became serious. Kratos took out his blades of chaos and even Atreus got ready with his bow and arrow. Both had come prepared when they came to Earth. "Queen Frigga, I will send you to the ring. Wait for our good news," John said as he waved his wing. She got teleported instantly to the House of Mysteries. Ordino and the spirit could take care of her till they return. As expected, the lightning blast wasn't enough to kill Hela. She got up from the pit that was created due to her fall. Her hair got replaced by weird horns that looked like a crown. "Congratulations. You have succeeded in annoying me," Hela said. Though she had surprise in her eyes after he saw the transformed John. She had never seen such a creature before in her life. "Do you think I care if you get annoyed or get killed?" John said, and this time he sent a blast consisting of both fire and lightning. This time Hela was ready and used 2 swords to block the attack. Even though she was dragged behind by the power, swords were able to stop it, albeit both the swords broke after that. "This will be interesting," Hela said as she threw 2 swords at John. The swords appeared out of thin air for her. She could literally make swords out of nothing. Kratos, who was equipped with the blades of chaos, flicked at the coming swords. His blades were able to cut away the swords easily. Thor, who got the opening, threw his Mjolnir at her. And as the story should have gone, she stopped Mjolnir with her bare hands. "This is impossible. Darling, you have no idea what's possible," Hela said and proceeded to break the hammer, but Strange, who had been an idle and silent guest all this time, used rings of Ragador to throw at Hela. Hela knew she had to let go of the hammer, if she didn't want to get hurt by the magic. Magic was one of those things which did hurt her a bit. After Hela released the hammer, Mjolnir went back to Thor's hands. But now Mjolnir had small cracks on it. "Thor, don't use Mjolnir on her. She was the previous owner of it, so she has the power to override and destroy it. Use your own power," John said. My power is the Mjolnir," Thor shouted back. "Are you the god of hammer, Thor, or god of thunder?" John said back. Hela meanwhile threw 2 swords again at them, and this time it was pointing towards Thor. John flew to him at fast speed and stopped the incoming swords with his wings. The swords got blasted away by his fire and lightning strike. "John, strength and physical attacks have no effect. We need to use magic to restrain her," Strange said. "You are right," John said as he changed back to normal form. Even though he could use magic in normal form, he still found it comfortable to use magic in human form. John then used biofission and made multiple copies of himself. What really surprised John was that even Strange made multiple copies of himself by using the magic spell of images of Icon. "This guy is a genius," John mumbled. John then used magical chains to tie up Hela while Strange used the crimson bands of Cyttorak, like he did against Thanos, to tie up Hela. Hela looked like she was drowned in chains. "We can't kill her. She will only die when Asgard is destroyed," John said. "Then what do you propose we should do?" "Bring Ragnarok on Asgard," Loki said. As he said that, a clone of him went with 2 long knives so that he could stab her with it. What they all didn't expect was a bunch of swords emerging from the ground, killing the clone of Loki. The swords emerged so fast that nobody could even react. The swords emerging looked exactly like it did to stop Searcher during his final attack. Only this time it was smaller in magnitude. And as the swords bloomed out, it killed all the clones of both John and Strange. Few swords even flew out. And one such sword directly went straight to the abdomen of John, impaling him. "John!" Thor shouted and ran to him. "No!" Kratos, who looked at it, screamed. He went instantly into rage mode and started using blades of chaos on Hela, who just got freed. Even Atreus went into rage mode and started shooting arrows on her. John, who was impaled, couldn't even scream out when the sword stabbed him deeply. He was stuck to the ground with a huge black sword that went from one side to the other side of the body. "Thor!" John mumbled. "I am here, my friend. Tell me, what should I do?" "Separate my body from the sword," John said, as he knew he would die if his body wasn't separated. He needed to heal from the resurrection fire. "Are you serious? You will die. This sword is stopping the bleeding," Thor asked with concern. "Just do it, Thor, I don't have much time," John said in a more grave tone. Thor hesitatingly separated the body of John from the sword. It was a slow burn, with blood gushing out from the stomach. Thor literally had to tear away one side of the abdomen to separate the sword, which was stuck to the ground. Thor felt angry. His only power came from Mjolnir, and that too had been decommissioned by John on the fear that it will break. He couldn't even help his friend who had helped him so much in his journey. He felt ashamed. He felt proud before thinking that in future he would face against Black Winter alone and defeat it. But now reality has slapped him hard. He couldn't even save his friend, let alone the universe. "You moron! What are you doing? You will kill him," Loki said as he saw Thor doing such a horrible thing. "It was John who asked me to do so," Thor said with low tone. His voice didn't have the conviction, as he felt whatever John asked him to do might kill him. "Are you nuts? He would die by bleeding." "What is this?" Loki shouted in amazement. He saw that on the abdomen of John, which had a huge hole suddenly lit in blue fire. The fire mended the hole fast and created new skin, tissue, organs and everything. After a few seconds the whole wound disappeared. Both Thor and Loki were amazed by what just happened. Even though Thor had seen John in Phoenix form, he never really cared. This new thing of John surprised him. Loki, who had never seen the form of Phoenix, was already surprised, and now his healing ability gave him a scare. He was literally on death's door a few minutes ago, and now he was back as he was before. John moved his body a bit as his clothes got mended again by magic. "Sheesh. That was close. Never been so close to seeing death," John said in a low tone. "I need to bring people to stop this madness of hers. Never expected her to be able to go through my skin, which is powered by gods. No wonder she is called Goddess of Death, even though it's a fake one," John mumbled. He saw Kratos, and Atreus was still confronting Hela, who was now defending herself. The blades of chaos were still very sharp and a strong weapon. "Kratos, I am all right. Come back. You can't fight in rage mode for a long time." "Atreus, you too," John said. Kratos, after hearing the words of John, stepped back and stopped attacking Hela. Hela was surprised that John was all right even after he was stabbed by her sword. She used her sword specifically to kill John, but even that was not enough to kill him. "Who are you?" State your name. Hela said. After all this time you care about my name? John said with a mocking tone. Don't test my patience, my guardian. Hela said. You are the one who tested my patience. John said. And as he said that, a long and shining sword came flying towards Hela from the back. She didn't even sense the incoming flying sword. The sword stabbed right at her stomach and she was impaled the same way John was impaled before. Only this time it was a white and exquisite sword as opposed to the black ones used by Hela. It's been annoying listening to your almighty voice for some time now. Came a voice which was of a girl but had a very deep tone in it. Then the people saw who was talking. A woman clad in white and blue-colored armor. The woman had red long hair hiding her left eye. The armor looked angelic as it had wings on the back. What was most astonishing was that there were swords circling around her, levitating in air. I saw you using swords. So why not have a sword fight with me? Said the woman. She looked very beautiful and had a fugue to die for. Yes, she was Urza Scarlet, the S-class mage from Fairy Tail and a member of Team Natsu. Her armor was the Heaven's Wheel armor, Tenrin no Yoroi. Count me in, came another voice. And this time the voice came from John's behind. Another woman. The woman wore an outfit of a magician. The magicians that normally operate in circuses. She was Zatanna Z. Zatara. From the Justice League Dark movie. John just spent 600 million combined to bring both of them. Since physical strength has no effect on Hela, John brought two high-class magicians. Even though Urza's power was more tilted to the strength side, her main power comes from magic. And Zatanna too was a very powerful magician. You brought more people to this fight. Loki shouted. So what do you think we should do? Do you have a better idea to defeat your sister? John asked. This is Urza, and this is Zatanna. John said. Yeah, I know of Urza. I have seen her in anime. Thor said. You saw my work? John asked. My father ordered us to watch your works as it might be a key to the future. Thor said in a low tone as he brought the topic of father, who has passed away now. Loki went up and placed his hand on the shoulders of Thor, consoling him. Thanks for helping us with this. John said, as he needed to play out the drama. Our pleasure. Zed said. I have been itching for a fight. Urza now came up to John and stood by his side. And as expected, when all of this was going on, Hela was able to remove the sword from her abdomen. She was bleeding after the sword was pulled out. But her wound healed fast too after that, just like John did. Only this time, the wounds got healed by themselves. How will we even defeat her, let alone kill her? Thor asked. I have been looking at the fight for some time. We can bring her soul out and trap it. Her body will just be that, a body. Zatanna suggested, as she had already got the relevant information from John. We can bring her soul out in the astral form and trap her. Strange said. Surprisingly, Strange had no expression when Zed and Urza showed up. It's like he had known they would come. He didn't even react much when John was injured. Now John was pretty sure that Strange had definitely seen all this via Time Stone. I have the amulet of Anubis which houses souls from the past lords. I can seal her there. John said. He didn't want to point out Strange as he might have had his own calculations. Good, let's get on with it. I will bring her astral form out. You all use your magic to restrain her. Strange said. All nodded and thus attacked. Urza used a bunch of swords to throw at Hela, John used magic to restrain her again using magical chains. Only this time the chains were more sturdy and huge. Zatanna used magic to grow vines from the ground and restrain her. Zed even used hypnosis on Hela, to make her lose concentration. Even though she was sure it wouldn't be too helpful, she still could make her slow. Hela of course couldn't take all of this lying down and retaliated. Again swords started growing out from the ground. The swords were bigger than last time, signifying that she was becoming stronger little by little. John stopped the swords using magic and supported Strange so that he could be near Hela to bring out her astral form. Urza too started defending, but not with flying swords this time, but by close combat. John saw that the chains were on the verge of breaking and used magic again to strengthen it. "Oh no! You are not going anywhere," Zatanna said as he used more magic power to make her more slow, and even used magic chains over vines that she had used. Strange finally was able to be close to her. He struck her head, which was the only accessible part of her body as all the other parts were covered by chains and vines. Kratos helped him in clearing the path towards her with his blades of chaos, cutting down the swords that grew out. And as Strange struck her head, the astral form of her came out. The astral form flew quite a distance back. "John, come here fast. Her astral form won't be out of her body for a long time." John flew to him as Hela had stopped attacking now. He directly opened the amulet of Anubis to suck her astral form inside it. "No. No. Not again," Hela said as she was trying her best to go back inside her body. But the souls of the previous lords that were in the amulet proved to be too powerful. John had already directed the souls of previous lords of order to keep Hela's soul trapped and sealed. After half a minute of struggle, the soul of hers was sucked by the amulet, trapping her inside with no hope for getting out again. Everybody sighed in relief after this happened. Even though they couldn't kill Hela, this was close to death for her, as she would never be able to get out of the amulet. "Thor, are you sure you are Odin's son? Both Hela and Loki had black hair while only you are blonde," John joked in order to make the situation a little funny. Thor didn't reply to it as he felt sad, while Loki gave a weird smile to this comment. "Thank you, warriors, for helping us in this fight." Thor then thanked Urza and Zatanna. Urza and Zed nodded at Thor. "You can thank Urza by helping her make a home in Asgard. Their whole guild is going to arrive in Asgard," John said. "The whole guild of Fairy Tale, you mean? Wouldn't the enemies also come?" Thor asked as he was concerned now. The enemies of Fairy Tale were really of high level, especially Zeph. "For now, no. Maybe they will arrive, but it might be far away from our planet," John said as usual, giving a vague answer. John would bring the Fairy Tale to Asgard in order to gain more fan values from it. "I will take care of it," Thor said. John could have used Pokemon and many powers to defeat Hela, but he chose not to do so. He wanted to see how powerful he was alone fighting her. Even though Hela did stab him, he wasn't fatally wounded. He needed to have good exercise, so he had this fight. Though at the end he still ended up asking for help. Urza and Zed were on his agenda for a long time. Urza and her guild would be in Asgard, influencing it and keeping an eye on everything. He wished to do the same with Nova Empire too, but before that he needed to collect fan values. Zed would be with Constantine as that was the deal with him. "Thor, what will you do with your Mjolnir?" John asked as he saw Thor looking at his hammer. "I don't know. I will need a better weapon," Thor said as he was really confused now of what he needed to do. "Mjolnir is just a part of your power, Thor. This was never your whole power. You need to awaken the powers of thunder that have been buried deep inside you. Then what do you recommend I should do to awaken the power which you think I possess? Thor asked. Talk to your mother. She will be able to guide you on this. Jon said. Speaking of your mother, let's go back. The fight here is sure to alert the locals. Loki, you better behave. I won't stop the Avengers if they come after you with swords and axes. Jon warned Loki at the end. Loki just shrugged at it. All vanished from the spot the moment Jon said that and appeared again in front of House of Mysteries. Loki was surprised with all the changes Earth had gone through the last few years. When he sat on the throne, he never cared to look into Earth, but now when he looked at this new ring he was in awe. As they were about to go inside, Jon stopped and looked at Loki with squinted eyes. Loki became stiff when Jon looked at him. What? Don't play tricks, Loki. Come back here, Jon said with a grave tone. Loki's shoulders drooped down as he knew that he was caught. He wanted to escape and look around the scenery but was caught red-handed. The illusion faded away and the actual Loki, who was a few meters away, appeared out of thin air and started walking towards them. You can see the illusion? Loki asked. Didn't your brother tell you I am the sorcerer supreme of this ring? Do you think anything escapes my eyes here? Jon said. Loki had a weird look on his face when Jon said that. When they last met, he wasn't even half as powerful as he was now. Now he had weird phoenix powers and even became the sorcerer supreme. This guy really thinks that he can escape from the Lord of Order. Funny one. Zed said with a bland tone, as if Loki being caught was written on the stars. Finally they all went into the House of Mysteries, including Kratos, Urza and others. They saw Frigga sitting in the fireplace talking with the spirit of the house. She had a sad and anxious look on her face, but when all came inside there was relief. We won, Mother. She is sealed away, Thor said. Thanks to me and my friends here, Loki added as he too was emotional seeing Mother again. He really missed her all these days and now finally the family is back together. Only person missing was the father. All took their seats which the spirit had arranged for them. Everybody introduced each other properly now, and had a talk of the battle that had happened against Hela and narrated to Frigga of how they had defeated her. She was relieved that her daughter was sealed away. Even though she was a violent one, at the end Hela was her daughter. Her body was with Jon and would be given to Frigga to be laid under the vault of Odin where her previous army was buried. They were able to stop the Ragnarok of Asgard, and that in itself was a huge achievement. Thor, you should give me the crown of Searcher. Eternal fire and Searcher staying close to each other is a disaster, Jon said to Thor. Only a fool like my brother will do stupid things like these, Loki said. Shut up, Loki. I at least defeated Searcher while you spent the days in luxury, Thor replied back. My sons, stop fighting. I heard Mjolnir had cracks now. What do you want to do about it? Frigga asked. I don't know, Mother. I thought I was strong enough to stop the Ragnarok of the universe. I can't even save Asgard from Ragnarok. How do I even confront that being? Thor said as almost lost his confidence. Didn't your father always tell you that Mjolnir was just a weapon to channel your power? The hammer does have a power of its own, but you, Thor, is stronger than that. You are the god of thunder, Frigga said. Have to mention this as I just remembered Jane Foster will be the new Thor in Love and Thunder. I know that, but how do I awaken it? Even Jon said the same thing, but I don't know anything about it. Then what should I do, Mother? Guide me. Thor asked. Isn't there a water of sights in this realm? Go into the water. Maybe the water spirits will help you in this regard. Frigga said. Water of Sights was in the deleted scene of Age of Ultron. You can all look up to in YouTube. I will be explaining it more in the later chapters. The legends don't end well when it comes to that water. Strange said as he was drinking tea and listening to their conversation. All the more reason for him to go and experience it. Only hardships will make him stronger. Frigga said. Sure, mother. I will leave for the Norn cave of this realm. I hope the water spirits will accept me of this realm. Thor said as he was now determined to be powerful and awaken his hidden powers. Loki, you two need to practice your illusions. John suddenly said. Why am I being brought here into the whole conversation? Loki grumbled. Do you think I saved you those years ago because I had a pity on you? No. It's because I know the potential of you. The potential to do good. Didn't you want a throne? Now you have it. With everything you ever wanted. John said. I never wanted the throne. I just wanted recognition. Loki said in an aggrieved tone. With the search for recognition he just lost his father. Even though he didn't like his father very much for lying to him, in the end he was still his father. Recognition. You were born in a palace with all things delivered to you. Can you imagine how many people in your own realm envy you? John said. Loki became silent when John said that he was really privileged in this regard. He had all the luxury one can think of. Being a prince he never cared about it. But what John said was right. Now Black Winter was coming and all the past grievances needed to be together to save themselves. I hope we all can be together to face the upcoming danger. John said. Agreed. We need to be together. And I need to go to Norn Cave. Who will accompany me in this? Thor asked. Strange got up and even Zatanna. John expected Strange to go with Thor as he had seen the future. But never expected Zed to join. Don't want to meet Constantine yet? John asked. Who cares of that ******. I will meet him when I am in a good mood. Zed said. Mother, you should go back to Asgard with Loki. Thor suggested. Yes. You should go back, Queen Frigga. I don't think the TVA will come after you anymore. The future is already in the garbage bin. There is no point anymore to fear them. John said. Frigga nodded at it as she really missed her home now. Especially after the death of her husband. What shall we do about our other sister? Loki asked as he remembered another sister being present in the universe. Heaven isn't exactly friendly to the 9 realms. Opening that realm will cause a war. We will have to tread very wisely here. John said. Opening the realm. What does that mean? Loki asked. The current 9 realms were once 10 realms. Your father sealed away the 10th realm, known as Heaven, after a war which broke out for supremacy of all realms between Asgard and Heaven. In that war my daughter was kidnapped and killed. In anger, your father went to the Yggdrasil and cut away Heaven from the world tree, sealing away that realm forever. We always believed that my daughter was killed. Frigga said. Until now. Yes, I can sense her in that realm. But in order to save her we will have to do a tough fight. This will be an uphill battle to free her, as she has already been brainwashed by them and she doesn't even know her own heritage and birth. John said. How dare they kidnap our sister and brainwash her? I will kill everyone in that realm. Thor said with anger. For once in life, we agree with each other, brother. Loki said. John shrugged at it as heaven really needed a kick in their posterior to remind them who was the boss in all the realms. Before saying such big things, get your power. Then we can talk about your sister. Frigga said as she too felt a little angry for being deceived by them and losing a daughter. After a small chat with everyone, Thor, Strange and Zed left for the Norn cave where the Water of Sights was present. Every realm has its reflection in the Water of Sights and all of the wells were connected to Yggdrasil and originated from the Well of Mimi, the place where Odin got his power and knowledge. Frigga, Loki, Kataus and Atreus and Urza left for Asgard. Urza left with them in order to see her future home. Since John had said that the fairy tale would arrive on Asgard, she needed to see the place with her own eyes. John went to rest after everybody went away as he was a little tired from all the fighting. Especially him being impaled was painful. Even though he healed with no scars, he still didn't like it. He just went to bed and slept. He was so exhausted that he slept till the next day. He felt refreshed after waking up. He called Ordino and the spirit to make him good food as he was hungry and needed a recharge for his body. He was having a good time when he heard a knock at the door. Ordino went and opened the door only to see Thor, whose vest was in tatters, standing, with Zed and Strange standing behind him. "Come in." John shouted. "Can I have some sleep here, my friend?" Thor asked. "Sure. Ordino, take him to the guest room," John said. Ordino led him away to the guest room so that he could rest. Thor looked like he had a tough battle. "Did he dip in the water with all his clothes on?" John asked. "Yes," Zed said. "No wonder his clothes are in tatters." "Did nobody tell him not to do so when you go swimming?" John asked. "We wanted to, but he jumped before we could say anything," Strange said. "No wonder. Was the journey successful?" "He hasn't spoken a word after coming out of the pond. He just asked us to take him to the ring as he needed a good sleep." "Home. Let him wake up. We will know what his deal is. You all can take a rest till he wakes up," John suggested as he could see Strange was a little tired with all the running around and even Zed. But Zed refused as she wanted to pay a visit to Constantine. At the end of the day she loved him even if she hated how Constantine led life like a thug. Strange sat in the living room and was looking at the fireplace with concentration. "You know all of this and what is going to happen, don't you?" "Yes. Well, I know what the future possibilities are and where it might lead to. I am just trying to rudder the ship till I become the Sorcerer Supreme. I only know up till that point." "Care to share?" John asked. "From what I have seen, you already know what is going to happen," Strange said. John raised his eyebrows when Strange said that. He knew many versions of the story, but the problem here was the story had messed up a long ago after the emergence of Black Winter, so he actually had no idea of what was going to happen. John didn't ask more and advised Strange to rest while he went to work. And as expected, Thor slept for more than 24 hours. John was surprised that he could even sleep for so long. After having a huge and proper meal, all sat in the living room. Even Zed came back, and this time she brought Constantine. Thor was sitting silently for some time before finally opening his mouth. "I had gained the powers of thunder," Thor said. "Then dude, why do you look like you lost everything in the process?" John asked as he was confused. Thor should have been happy, but he didn't look like that at all. "Because I met a child at the pond," The child said, I am still very weak and needed to find him to become the king that I was meant to be. Thor said, mate, you just met the kid. Couldn't you just kidnap him? Constantine said, no. The child wasn't a living being. And it was just a dream. How can I catch him? Thor replied. Figures. Zed said. What does the child look like? John asked. The child was made of white light and spoke in ancient language which has almost been forgotten in the 9 realms. Thor said. What more did the child say? John asked again. The child said that I can only find him after I complete the Yggdrasil. Thor replied. John was now thinking who this child was. He had to go through all the known stories he knew of Thor, and then suddenly it struck him. A story of Thor which was long forgotten. Did the child have 2 crows on his shoulders? John asked. Yes. Thor replied with shining eyes because John had guessed correctly. He was confused with what his visions were, and so he came straight to John, as only he might know of these visions and the meaning of it. Then John looked at Strange. The whole story became completely clear to him. No wonder you joined us in this quest. Are you ready to sacrifice? John asked Strange. Yes. I have already thought of it. Strange said as he too now knew the story. Good. Thor, what else did the child say? John asked. He only said I needed to be powerful and connect all the realms to the Yggdrasil to meet him. Understood. But before we connect heaven to the Yggdrasil, we will need preparations. John said. Leave the hammer. You will not need it anymore. John continued. You want me to give away Mjolnir? Thor asked in a sad tone. You will get a better weapon. Don't worry. Even though you are now the god of thunder, a weapon like Mjolnir isn't enough for you. Only a king weapon will be fit for you. John said. Avengers, we have a war to participate in. Report back who are free and want to have some fun in space. John said after he put on the helmet. After a minute, notifications came to fix it. Tony and Bruce were busy with finding antimetal, so they declined. Tony wanted to join, but he knew finding the metal was more important than participating in a galactic battle. At the end, Victor, Aquaman, Oliver, Clint, Mera and the Wolf School reported for battle. John had already given a small rundown of the battle they were going to face. Another realm which was very powerful and even clashed with Asgard once. Thor knew that they would have to fight heaven after they connected to Yggdrasil, so he was happy that many joined to help him in this journey for self-improvement. Now since all of you are here, let's go to Nidavellir. The place where Mjolnir was made. John said. Where are Diana and Steve? Victor asked. Apparently they went on a date somewhere in the Amazon. Steve wanted to build a post for the League there, so Diana joined in. Clint said. Seems like the end of the world had made them closer. John joked. Everybody laughed at it. So now all of you are updated about what is going to go down. John continued. Yes. A different realm. Enemies. Kill. Got it. Oliver said. Right, but I do have to mention, among the enemies will be my sister. Thor mentioned. What's up with your family? First it was Loki, then your sister Hela. And now another sister. Arthur said. Thor shrugged his shoulders as he really didn't know what was wrong with his family. All right, let's go. Then we will go to Asgard too. John said. With that being said, they all vanished from their spot. At the next moment they were in Nidavellir, the place of the dwarfs. Well, they weren't actually dwarfs. More like giant men. And Nidavellir didn't look like the way it was in the original story. The forge surrounding the neutron star. The rings surrounding the star looked huge. And there were several rings surrounding it. As they landed, they saw several dwarfs working and running around. All had hammer on their hands or on their back. In Nidavellir, all the dwarfs present knew how to forge weapons. As they appeared, the dwarfs noticed that many people suddenly appeared. At first they were defensive, as these people had never seen before here, but soon noticed Thor among them. One of the dwarfs asked, "Are you Thor?" "Yes. I am Thor from Asgard. I need to talk with your Eitri." Thor said. "Sure. Please follow me." "He is in the main forge," said the dwarf. "How are these dwarfs?" "They are more big than giant men in our realms," Siri asked in a low tone. "That's a good question," Triss replied. They all followed him to the main forge, where they saw Eitri hammering a sword. Jon, after seeing Eitri, mumbled, "Tyrion Lannister." Eitri turned back when they all approached him. "Thor. What a surprise. After so many years. How are you? How is All-Father Odin?" Eitri asked. Thor became sad when Eitri asked this. "Asgard is fine. Father passed away 3 days ago." "What? How did this happen?" Eitri asked, as he was surprised that Odin had died. "He was old and his time came to an end. It's been many years," Thor said with a sad tone. "I understand. Why are you here, Thor? You should be in Asgard mourning," Eitri said, as he was confused why Thor was here. "I need you to make a king weapon for me, Eitri. Mjolnir now has cracks. I need a new weapon fit for myself. There will be a war soon, and I need to be ready." "War? What war?" "Heaven is going to be connected again," Thor replied. "Heaven?" Eitri mumbled. He too knew about heaven, as was the king of dwarfs, and he too was as old as Odin, so he knew that heaven existed and terrorized all the other realms until Asgard came and pushed them back. "Why do you want to connect the heaven to the world tree again? The 9 realms are better off without them," Eitri said. "Because I need some answers and more power. And my sister is with them," Thor replied. "Your sister? I understand. We have a mold for your weapon. Do you want me to build for you now?" "Yes. And if possible, make some swords and weapon for my friends here. They will accompany me to this war, so we need to be armed," Thor said. "Gladly. My friends, we will have to make the sharpest of weapon from Aru metal for the guests here. We will have to be ready for war," Eitri declared to the dwarfs. The dwarfs got serious when Eitri said there will be a war, so everybody got busy. And since the ring was working properly, Thor didn't have to be near dead to make his new weapon. Other dwarfs too started asking the others of what kind of weapon they wanted. Everybody was amazed by the new place that they were in. At first they thought Nidavellir would just be another planet, but that notion quickly went away as they saw it was a bunch of rings like their ring surrounding a neutron star. They never expected such kind of places existed in the universe. Oliver and Clint asked for new and improved bows. The witches asked for new swords made of Aru metal, as Jon had said that Aru metal is more strong and powerful than their current swords. Jon suggested that they should combine Aru and vibranium if that was possible to make by the dwarfs. The dwarfs needed to gauge the power levels of everyone to make suitable weapons for them, and thus took the witches, Clint, Oliver and Siri. Eitri was particularly interested in the trident of Aquaman after placing his eyes on it. So Eitri asked to check on it. Arthur gave him the permission and thus he started researching on it while the other dwarfs became busy in getting the mold ready. The whole process took a longer time than John had expected. He thought it would only take a few hours, but in the end it took more than a day. Apparently Ciri's power level was too huge, so they had to bring another mold of Uru metal which had the same power as Thor's new weapon. Even though John expected her to be very powerful, he didn't expect that they would be happy to help her with King's mold. Probably because Heaven might have antagonized them a long time ago, and since they all came to fight Heaven they were happy to help. So after a day, all the weapons were ready. The dwarfs were successful in adding Uru metal to the vibranium-made bow of Clint. And Oliver's long bow too got added by Uru metal, since Oliver's power was more magical now. The witches got new and shining swords. The swords could even shoot now as opposed to only being used for close combat. But Ciri was the one who got a more fantastic weapon. Her sword now literally could distort space and send space blades across. John was sure that Ciri's sword was more powerful than Thor's Stormbreaker. "What do you want to name it?" John asked, as every good weapon has a name. "Ziriel," Ciri said. "Thor, is your weapon ready?" John asked. "Yes," Thor said, as now he had the Stormbreaker in his hands. And instead of having wood as the handle, the axe had a handle made of Uru metal and was wrapped in a cloth around it. Groot wasn't present in its making, so it wasn't required. "So can you open the Bifrost with it?" John asked. "Yes. They also mended Mjolnir, so I can use both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir." "Good. Let's go." "Thank you, Eitri, for all the hospitality. Contact us if you need any help, especially if Thanos comes asking for making a gauntlet. No matter what, don't oppose him. Just send us a signal. We will handle it by ourselves after that," John said to Eitri. During the whole time he was here, he talked with him and warned him that Thanos might come to Nidavellir to make a gauntlet. Thor, who was also listening to all of this, convinced Eitri that whatever John was saying might come true, so they needed to keep an eye. Thor even decided to send some soldiers here as defense since John had warned. Eitri nodded at it. And after saying goodbye and thanking the dwarfs, all vanished from their place and appeared at the palace of Asgard. Those who have come to Asgard for the first time were in awe of such a majestic palace. They all had to take a second to fully take in the view. Even Arthur, who lived in Atlantis, was impressed by such a huge palace. They all went into the hall. The guards didn't stop them as Thor was with them. After they reached the hall, they saw Loki directing some guards. John was expecting Loki to sit on the throne, but surprisingly he didn't. There was nobody sitting on the throne. "Brother!" Thor shouted. "My brother! You are here. How was the adventure in the Water of Sights?" Loki asked. "A successful one," Thor replied, showing him both Stormbreaker and Mjolnir. "Congratulations. I guess you are all here to face the upcoming war." "Yes," John replied. "I didn't expect you not to occupy Father's throne," Thor said. "Do you think so low of me, brother? I said I never wanted the throne. I just needed recognition," Loki said. "Doesn't matter. There should always be a king of Asgard. That's what it was and that's what it should be. You all better be ready to appoint a king after the war is over." Thor and Loki both nodded at it. As they were talking, Queen Frigga entered the hall. "I was waiting for you, Thor." Tonight there will be a mourning ceremony for your father. Frigga said. I understand, mother. Thor said. All knew they would have to participate in the ceremony before they would go to war. And all were okay with that. For many people it was their first time in Asgard and they wanted to explore this legendary and beautiful place. Thor got busy in the arrangements with his brother while others just left. The family needed a bit of time off after all that had happened the last few days. They didn't even get time to mourn their father's death, and so they wanted to have a fitting mourning ceremony for their father. That night they all went to the ceremony. The ceremony was almost the same that happened after the death of Frigga in the original story. Only this time Odin was on the other end of it instead of Frigga. All were sad about the passing of their beloved king. Many had tears in their eyes. John and others too attended the ceremony and mourned for the king. The next day all got ready to assault heaven. This time even Loki was present. They all wore Kryptonian suits as they might have to travel in space. All gathered in the main hall for departure. Before we go to heaven, I will make something clear. From what I know, their kingdom is ruled by women. The men there can be said as only lower class, as their powers are mostly centered towards the women and they have a queen to rule them. Their appearance will be like angels. That is the reason why their realm is named as heaven. They are aggressive and are nothing like the angels that are depicted in the books of Midgard. So don't get distracted by their beauties. Their place is like Asgard. But they are more towards the technological side. Their city is powered by a furnace. If we can destroy their furnace, we will win half the war. The suits of yours are calibrated to fly, so you all can fly and fight. Victor, Arthur, Siri, Triss, Yen, Thor and I will be the frontal assault. Expect heavy retaliation as they will probably be very pissed off. We will first bring their realm to their knees. And then Thor can connect their realm to the world tree by going to the water of sights in their realm. Can't we have a discussion first? Loki asked. They will attack the moment you show your faces. Especially you, my son. Frigga said as she pointed to Thor. Doesn't matter. We will come out victorious. Thor said. All right. This war is going to take time. So good luck. Don't die out there. Especially you, Clint. Why am I being pointed out here? Clint asked. Because only you are the normal one here, mate. Angels love to bring these false goddesses to their knees. Constantine said. The team consisted of Strange, Kratos, Urza, Zatanna, Constantine, Thor, Loki, Clint, Arthur, Mera, Oliver, Victor, Geralt, Triss, Yennefer, Ciri, other two witches and John. This was a big team which had huge firepower. Let's go. Geralt said. With that said, John vanished with all of them. And the next thing they saw was a huge city. A city that had almost the same size as Asgard. But the main difference was the sky-reaching skyscrapers. The buildings were so tall that the buildings on Earth would look like ants when taken into comparison. John didn't directly take them to the city but just teleported them outside the city where they were hovering using their magic or suits. The city looked so futuristic, so they had to stop and appreciate such marvels created by people of heaven. This is better than I imagined. John mumbled. Let's stop the appreciation and assault. Thor reminded John. True. Ciri, Triss and Yen. You three will in charge of destroying the furnace. We will divert their attention. Since you three are women, it will be easier for you. They haven't noticed us yet, and I have also enchanted ourselves, so you three will be able to blend in easily. Now go. After blending in, signal us. We will then cause havoc. John said. Noted. Let's conquer this realm, girls. Triss said, and Ciri teleported them to a dark alley in the huge city. While John and others just waited in a hidden place outside the city. This place is huge. Mera said. Yes. It's a pity that such a place has such a dark past. Gerald said. Every monument of civilization is also a monument of barbarism. Neither is Asgard very pure. All the progress that Asgard has achieved didn't come easily. Odin and his father fought for it and conquered realms. John said. Thor, who was listening to it, also accepted it. He knew that his father went to conquer realms, and for this reason they have the current prosperity. This riches and glory came at a cost. The cost of lives. Then what should we do? Be peaceful at all times. I don't think that is possible. Victor said. It isn't. Ambitions will always be there. Wars, battles will always be present. Even if we are silent, do you think others will be silent? No. We can either choose to attack or defend. That's how the worlds work. Survival of the fittest. John said. As they all were getting philosophical, suddenly a signal came that Triss and others had already disguised themselves and had found out the location of the furnace. They now needed a distraction. People, it's our time to shine. Arthur said. Are you ready to light the fuse, Constantine? John asked. With pleasure, he replied. Shazam! Both of them shouted at that time, and as they did so a huge bolt of lightning came and hit both of them. Then John proceeded to change himself to the phoenix. If the lightning bolt wasn't enough to draw the attention of the people here, then the appearance of a huge burning bird would definitely cause a commotion. John didn't attack but waited for their army to arrive. And they didn't disappoint. After a minute or so a whole platoon of armed women appeared on small speedboats which could be driven in air. Their number was large. Around 100. They stopped near John's team. The leader who was leading the team said. Who are? Then she squinted her eyes and looked at Thor. Attack. As they said, all the women instantly attacked without even hesitating for a second. I hate to say this, but I told you so. John said to Loki, who wanted to negotiate first. Loki shrugged his shoulders as he really didn't expect that the people of heaven would be so agitated. And thus the fight ensued. John used his phoenix and magical powers to attack all of the realm of heaven. Oliver used his magic to make arrows and started shooting the army. So did Clint. Even though Clint's arrows were limited, he had a close combat and even used the magical arrows given to him by Oliver. Arthur turned himself to aqua form and started fighting. The women of heaven used spears and swords, but they had no effect on Arthur as he fought. Arthur started flying around in circles so fast that it caused a sonic boom and aimed his trident at the army. While doing so, it caused ice to form around. Mera too joined him. Victor and the witches went on a spree of close combat. John had specifically asked them not to give fatal injury to the army of women, as they weren't sure how Angela would react if she sees her sisters being dead. No matter what, Angela was brought up here and still had affection for the people here. The whole fight didn't even last 5 minutes before they defeated the whole army. There was lesser damage as the fight was mostly in the sky and the army had a disadvantage of not knowing how to fly. So that gave them a good advantage over the whole army. Let's get down to the city. We should concentrate on getting Aldrich. Urza said. Good idea. They all landed at a huge square after throwing the bodies of unconscious women on the side in a safe place. The normal people, which consisted mostly of women and few men, were scared when they saw unknown people landing in the middle. Especially the huge blue-colored burning bird was enough to be a nightmare for them, as they had never seen such a creature. Another platoon of people will come, and this time it will be a much larger one, Victor said. And we will defeat them, Thor said as black clouds started forming above. As agreed, no kill rule until Aldrich comes into the scene, John reminded them. How will we recognize her? Loki asked. You don't. I will, John replied. This time there was a much larger number of army and they looked more prepared and armed than before. Their numbers now exceeded 500. Oh, this isn't going to be easy, Gerald said. Where is the fun if it's that easy? Urza said as she transformed herself to heaven wheel armor. She used normal armor to assault first, but this time she had to be serious. Like before, the women could utter a word and started attacking, more frantically this time. John flew over and started using both lightning and fire to stop the women. Their physiques were like Asgardians and thus normal fire wouldn't hurt them too much, but John's fire and lightning were too powerful and the women were instantly knocked away. Meanwhile others joined the fight. Thor wreaked havoc with both his weapons as he threw them around. Urza was a huge menace to them as she threw the swords around. Nobody could come close to her, let alone attack her. Clint and Oliver held their own with ease as they used both long-range and short-range tactics. Hey Arthur, can you put us on a high building? It's weird for us to fight in the open, Clint said. Aquaman nodded at it and took both Oliver and Clint to the roof of a tall building to fight exactly like he did in the New York War. Only this time there was Oliver with him. The jets on Kryptonian suits wasn't fast enough to fly around in high speed. Zatanna used her magic to do all-out assault on the army, while Mera and the witches engaged in close combat. They all were too powerful to handle. Mera used her power of controlling water, which she found in the fountain nearby. The witches used their new swords and used magic too for combat. Loki used illusions to distract the army, which the witches took advantage. Even though the number of the opposition was huge, they were not able to overwhelm John's team. It took a solid 15 minutes to defeat the platoon of heaven. It took so much time because the army was well trained and were better than the previous smaller platoon. Is that all they have got? Thor asked. No. This was a distraction for us too while they set up long-range combatants around us, Constantine said. We need to neutralize them before they can do any harm, John said. Victor, Constantine, John and I will be going around. You all hold the fort, Arthur said. Let catch these sneaky bast ******s, Constantine said. Then they all flew away to neutralize the opponents. Don't make them unconscious. We need to talk to them. It's not going to lead anywhere if we just go on assaulting, Loki said. From when did you become such a pacifist, Loki? I still want to bury you 6 feet down, you know, Clint said over focus. He was still angry with the manipulation that Loki did. Even though nobody was killed in it, it still pissed him off. We are here to bring the realm to surrender, not make this an empty shell. And you are welcome to try if you can defeat a god, mortal, Loki argued back. Both of you just put a zip to it, Strange said. John, we do need to talk. I will bring some people who can talk. Hold them down, John replied. The four were going through building after buildings, flushing away the long-range assassins who had already started shooting at the people on the square. The people who were fighting on the ground had to defend now. Strange and Zatanna used magic to defend. Clint and Oliver were still on a rooftop sending long-range arrows to the surrounding buildings, wherever they thought the enemies were hiding. Even though they were in the open, they were able to defend well. But unfortunately, they weren't perfect. One such shot went straight through the shoulder of Clint. Clint! No! Oliver shouted, who was close by. John, we need help. Clint's been shot. Oliver said. This was the first injury they suffered. John became angry when he heard that. They had been trying to keep the damage to the minimum. Since they don't understand, let's try the hard way now. John said as now he proceeded to demolish buildings around. All the tall buildings around the place were demolished as he went through them one after another. His body was powered by the strength of Zeus and Phoenix, so even these sturdy buildings couldn't stop him. As he demolished them, he came to the place where Clint was. He was bleeding profusely. John used his resurrection fire to heal him and even the Philosopher's Stone to grow the tissues that were damaged. On the other hand, Constantine was able to catch an assassin. Phew! Thanks, John. Couldn't handle another scar on my body. My wife would just be very angry. Clint said. You are hawky. You shouldn't get shot so easily. John said. I am not invincible as you guys. I can't see all the shots. Clint replied. It's fortunate that the shot went through your shoulder and not the head. It would have been game over for you. Oliver said. Let's go down. And see what their deal is. John said. They then both teleported to the square where Constantine brought the woman prisoner. Thor, did you ask? John asked. Yes. Her name is Lawlia. She said they don't know anyone named Aldrich. Zatanna said. In a much less friendly way. Strange commented. Do you know anyone named Angela? John asked, looking at the woman. She could be said as one of the most beautiful women John had ever seen. The women in the army wore golden armor. This new army had golden wings on their back which allowed them to fly, though not at high speed. John could see the hatred in the eyes of the woman. The woman shuddered when she heard the name Angela. From your reaction it seems you do know her. Zed, find out from her memories what is the deal with Angela. Angela is the name that these people had named your sister. Aldrich was the name given by King Odin. John said. Gladly. Zed said with a very evil and seductive smile looking at Lawlia. No. No. Don't come close. The Queen will kill all of you, no. The woman resisted but of no avail. Constantine was holding her tightly as Zed used magic to read her memories. The Queen can't even defend herself, forget about killing us. John said. Even if heaven had a weapon that could pose a threat to them, Triss and others were going to take care of it as the furnace would be destroyed soon. Any weapon would need massive power to launch, and by destroying the main power source it would be much easier. After a minute or so, Zatanna was able to read her memories. She had a weird look on her face after reading it. Is there any problem? Thor asked as he saw the weird face of her. They all got acquainted in Asgard and so they knew each other quite well now, so Thor didn't hesitate to ask her. As of now all the people in the Avengers didn't find it weird with people joining them as they all had their own stories. There is no problem per se. But the point is Angela is the princess of this realm. Next in line to be the queen. Zatanna said. Everybody was taken aback by this sudden change. Even John didn't expect that. What a way to spit at the face of Asgard. I admire them more now, Loki said. Nobody paid attention to this sarcastic remark of his. Since she is the princess, let's go to the palace. She will be there, Thor said as he was unfazed that his sister was the next to be queen. True, Arthur said. They then all flew away to the direction of the palace that they could see from afar. Like all the buildings here, their palace too looked futuristic from afar. As they were flying, they heard a huge explosion coming from their left side. The explosion was so huge that there was a huge mushroom cloud above it. Looks like the magicians were successful, Mera said. Siri, is everything fine there? Yes. We are fine. The guards didn't even know what hit them, Siri replied over focus. Come to the palace. We are going there, John said. Right away, came the voice of Triss over focus. As they approached the palace, they saw a huge army levitating over, and the most surprising part was the woman that was leading the charge had blonde hair. Let me guess, that is my sister, Loki said. Yes, came the reply of John. Hence proved that Thor isn't an illegitimate child of King Odin. Arthur joked. My father never had such kinds of things, Thor said in a serious tone. They all flew opposite to the army. For the first time, the army of heaven didn't attack nonsensically like the previous 2 times, but just looked at them. About half an hour ago, the palace got the information that there had been intruders. The first team was sent to inquire and capture the outsiders. It's been thousands of years that they have been imprisoned here. Even though they were self-sufficient, they couldn't go out. And the reason for this was only one person: Odin. The people of heaven hated him to the core. The children were taught from birth that Odin was responsible for all the wrong things that happened to them. And the portrait of Odin was always shown to everyone. So when the first platoon went to confront John's team, they could easily recognize Thor as a descendant of Odin, and that was the reason they immediately sent the request for more help. After the queen came to know that people from Asgard had arrived, she immediately sent her strongest 2 platoons to confront the enemy. One in front and one sneakily. But the strongest of them couldn't even hold the enemy back for more than half an hour, forget about defeating the enemy. The queen was surprised, as Odin's army wasn't that powerful last time. She again blamed Odin, as she thought Asgard progressed further ahead while they stagnated. And then another bad news came. The furnace was destroyed. The queen now knew for sure that the enemy had come prepared. This war against the Asgardians today might be their ultimate test, as before Asgard was never able to come so close to their kingdom. And thus she used her trump card. Angela. She was born an Asgardian, which she didn't know yet. She brainwashed her like all others from childhood and raised her like her own daughter. Being an Asgardian and daughter of Odin, she had superior physique and could easily best her opponents. The queen made her the princess after she was sure that Angela would be dedicated to the heaven. She made her the princess just so that she could spat on Odin later when their realm would be opened. Because she knew for sure that the realm would open one day. They just needed to wait. But she didn't know that the opening of the realm would be their doom. Your name is Angela, right? John asked. Asgardian, be mindful of your tone. She is the princess of heaven, you are just a soldier of Asgard. You all should bow down to her, said a woman who stood close by her. But the next moment a knife was placed on her neck. It was Loki with his illusion. Even I, the Prince of Asgard, don't dare to talk with him in that tone. You have quite the courage. That's it, guys. Hope you like the video. Like, share and subscribe the channel, and also make sure you tell me your recommendation in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching.